excited to introduce Megan Conroy, who I'm blessed to call a mentor and a colleague. Megan has been the technical director with Volleyball Nova Scotia since 2016. In her position, she's been able to meet and work together with many amazing coaches and become a strong advocate in creating and holding space for female coaches, as well as coaches from underrepresented communities to feel supported and help them excel, and to provide clubs support to grow and develop the sport of volleyball in Nova Scotia. Megan's an NCCP certified performance coach, as well as a coach learning facilitator, evaluator, and master coach developer who has spent countless hours over the last 22 years in the gym. She's led programs from grassroots to high performance levels, from high school to Team Newfoundland, Team Nova Scotia. She was an assistant coach with Dalhousie University for 6 seasons and has been a manager, head coach, and assistant coach in 3 straight Canada Summer Games. So quite the resume, and she's bringing an awesome topic here today, which I think we can all benefit from. So over to you, Megan.
Awesome. Thanks, Elle. Welcome, everybody. I'm just going to start my screen share, so bear with me while I get that started. Always so awkward when we have to do this, but here we are. It's the world of Zoom. All right. So welcome. Thanks for coming. Apologies if you signed up for the first one. I ended up getting COVID, so was in no state to communicate with anybody on our original date. So thanks for coming back. If you signed up for that, or if it now became a date you could be here, welcome. So thanks for spending an hour with me this evening. Again, the irony is not lost on me that we are asking you to give up an hour and an evening to talk about setting boundaries. But hopefully you will be able to kind of take this time to reflect, think about what your own coaching journey kind of looks like, and hopefully leave with a few tangible tips to take forward into your coaching pathway as you move forward. I say I'm by no means an expert at any of this. I am a work in progress, and I'm still in my do as I say, not as I do era. So I still try to, take a moment to reflect every time I talk to coaches about setting boundaries and think about what it looks like for myself as well. So we're going to jump right into this. We're going to look at setting boundaries as coaches kind of from 3 different lenses. The first one is taking a little bit of time to be self-aware of maybe what some of our limits are, what's happening in our own lives. We're going to then jump into thinking outside the norm. The life of someone involved in sport doesn't look like the life of someone not involved in sport. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the ways that happens. And then we'll finish off hopefully with some strategies and some tangibles that are some great takeaways for you or to share with other coaches around you, to try to start incorporating some of these ideas into your coaching and your life and trying to achieve some sort of balance along the way. So I also realized today that Google Slides now incorporates GIFs and memes. So be prepared for lots of those as we go through to make this just a little bit more exciting. So we're going to start with an icebreaker. We're going to use Mentimeter. For those of you who haven't used it, it's really simple to use. You're going to contribute some ideas just through your phone or your device, whatever you have in front of you. So I'm going to switch my screen to my Mentimeter, and the instructions for how you're going to contribute will come in just a moment. So just with me. Big. And okay, Al, can you see that? Okay, Mentimeter. Amazing.
Looks good.
Yeah. Okay. So you'll see at the top of the screen, it says to join. Just go to menti.com, whether you have your phone or another device with you or just your web browser. Go to menti.com and put in the code, which is there at the top, or you can just use the QR code on your screen, whatever works easiest for you. If you put the code in, you should get a prompt for an opportunity to put in some answers to my first question, which is, why did you get into coaching? And I'm going to give a little bit of time here for you folks to put in some answers. And as you put in your answers, we'll start to see some of those answers populate here on the screen. So give a little bit of time. You can put in more than one answer, so please feel free. Contribute as many as you like, and it's going to adjust as people contribute different ideas. If we hit some of the same, that word might get bigger. It'll give us a little visual as we get that. Awesome, lots of good stuff coming in. I love how this gives us a little idea of what's happening out there. So again, some of the answers, I'll just kind of pick a few of them as we go along. Definitely lots of giving back to your sport, feeling of helping, working with youth, had children in the sport. Haha, you got roped in. Your own coaches, just a love of sport. Someone asked, love that. That's a big one, especially for females in sport. For some reason, generally generic across the board, we don't always realize that we should be taking on some of these sport leadership roles. Asking goes a long way. I've very rarely gotten turned down by asking someone to be involved in sport. So that's a little tidbit early on. All right. Yeah, there's a need in your area to give back. Awesome. Love that. Okay. I'm going to move to my next question. So more contributions coming. Your own device should just roll along with me. How did you get into coaching? So I think some of that popped up in the last one. So if you feel free to repopulate again in this one. How did you get into coaching? Or if you're thinking of getting into coaching, what entices you? Someone, yeah, played the sport, athletes coming into a changing roles into a coach. Yep, I feel that. Too many injuries. That's one of mine. Al, you're starting to feel that one. Yep, was asked, athlete, young start. Yep, there was a need. Lots of being asked. School needed me, club needed me, asked. Awesome. Extra floor time. Staying around the sport. Amazing. My wife, love that. So lots of people, we can see a kind of a bit of a theme of being asked, being encouraged, being asked to help out. There was a need. Thank you very much for contributing there. I got two more questions here for us. The next one, again, try to go, as concise as we can, because I'm sure this could be a novel for anybody who's involved in coaching. What do you hope to personally gain out of your current coaching experience? So what are some things you're hoping to gain as you involve yourself in coaching? Got some good ones coming in. Gaining leadership skills, being an inspiration, leaving a legacy, looking for a career in my sport. Awesome. Okay, more people involved in sport careers, helping my children, giving back, increasing my knowledge, inspiration. I'm gonna leave another 30 seconds on this one because some of these require a little bit more thought. Increasing knowledge, giving back. Awesome. All right, and my last one, what are some barriers or challenges to being involved in your current coaching role? So it could be as simple as the day-to-day, it could be bigger picture. Where do some of those barriers, frustrations come in with doing what you're doing? Time stays nice and big. That means lots of people have hit that one. Not shocking. All right, finances, time, gender equity, too many other voices, commitments or multiple commitments, childcare, parents, toxic NSO. Cost, politics, lack of volunteers, other people to help. Time is huge. That means, again, lots of people had that coming in. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of your thoughts on our Mentimeter as we go into that. I'm gonna close that out, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about some of these issues that have come up as we go through the presentation. So let me roll back to my original here. Okay. So we're going to jump into the first lens, which is self-awareness. So I think a lot of people really look at sport as being something they want to be involved in, but like sport is like the Grinch. Sport is thirsty, it is parched, it is greedy, it will continue to take and take and take and take. It will never be quenched. It is a thirst that will always be there because there is always a need. And that comes in with a little bit of a negative connotation the way I've presented it, but that's a bit of the reality of the sports system in general. It is primarily based on volunteers, and it cannot exist without volunteers, whether that's coaches, whether that's board members, organizers, fundraisers. Referees in some sports are not paid, they are volunteers. So there's all kinds of different needs for sport to function. And the reality is that they're looking at folks just like all of you and folks like me prior to working in sport to help it function. And the reality is a couple of things I'd like you to think about and consider is kind of the difference between committed and overcommitted. I personally find a lot of people in sport feel, and I know I did personally feel, that you either have to give 100% or you can't be involved. And where that kind of spins into is being overcommitted. It sometimes spins into mental health and burnout because we're giving beyond our means. So definitely something we need to consider and to be self-aware is like, where is my line of being committed to versus being overcommitted? There's a lot of factors that come into that, and it's going to look different for each person. It might even look different for me depending on the scenarios that I'm involved in, because I only have so much of my time that I can divvy up to different things that I'm doing. But it's something that as coaches, we need to be very aware. And it's an intentional kind of reflection that we need to make for ourselves of where is your line for yourself? Where's your gray area? And where are you, you've gone too far over, you're into the red zone. The reality is that we can be involved in sport if we're not giving 100%. And what does 100% look like? Well, I think my previous perception of giving 100% was I have to be at every single practice. I have to be at every single game. I have to be at every single away tournament. I have to be there for it all, or else I'm not contributing as much as I could. That might be the case, but the reality is if I'm giving 100% of my time of what I have available, it might not necessarily mean I'm attending 100% of everything. So I'll use my own coaching example this fall right now. I'm coaching a team, but I talked with the coach right from the beginning and said I can make about 50% of the season in terms of practices, games, tournaments. I'm committed to making that 50%. I will be at 100% as best I can each day to be at things I've committed to attending, but there's 50% of the things I'm not going to get there for. And we had to have a conversation, was the head coach going to be okay with that? So having those types of conversations with the people you're involved in is something we'll talk about a little bit more when we get into some strategies. But just, again, I invite you to think about, personally, where is your line and where are you crossing into overcommitted from committed? Another kind of self-awareness thing to be thinking about is that coaching can be lonely. Even though you are surrounded by people, it can feel very lonely at times, especially if you're in a situation where you don't have a coaching staff or you don't have a support staff who's able to really contribute to the on-court or on ice or on-field elements. Maybe you have some great people around you that can help with the management side of things or the communication or the finances. But when you're out in your field of play and it's just you, that can feel pretty isolating for a bunch of different reasons. Number one, you don't have anybody to talk to and like have a laugh with, maybe outside of your athletes, where there's always like a bit of a barrier there, an intentional barrier between athlete to coach. You don't have somebody there to be a sounding board, to like talk about different ideas. Maybe, you're deciding whether you need to make a substitution or put in a different line or change something in your training. Not having a sounding board can be really challenging and can potentially add to that mental health and that burnout if you don't have a bit of a support kind of system around you. So again, things to consider are how can we tackle this? If the reality is you don't have another coach with you who's able to alleviate some of that, then you might have to get a bit creative and think outside the box of, where else can I get that support that I'm requiring as a coach? But going into your own gym or your own rink, kind of practice after practice without people to help bounce some ideas off of can feel pretty isolating, and again can add to mental health and different types of mental health issues, and or injuries and burnout. The last thing I want to talk about on this slide is reframing the word selfish. So by definition, selfish means lacking consideration for others, concerned chiefly with one's own personal profit, benefits, pleasure, with no regard for others. So in that definition sounds pretty negative. However, so part of this definition can create feelings of self-doubt, of shame, of guilt in its wake, in terms of being able to take time for yourself and say no sometimes. But the other half of the definition focuses on what we should instinctually be doing, and that's taking care of ourselves. So we sometimes worry about maybe being labeled selfish or being labeled, not willing to help or, saying no. And us as coaches, we often overcompensate with that and be afraid to say no. And it's usually to our own detriment. Again, going back up to the couple points I mentioned earlier. We become so afraid to take care of ourselves and for the fear of being judged because of the way, again, like society has put on that word and just being able to say no. I think coming up through in sport, because there's such a great need, going back to my point of a sport is thirsty and greedy, we are, the guilt that comes with that can be very real. This team, these kids aren't going to have a place to play unless you say yes. This isn't going to happen if you don't help. We need somebody to take a lead. And, because if you don't, like, nobody knows how to do that. And unfortunately, if we happen to possess some of the things that people are after, we often go back to, like, for the kids or for the athletes to not have a place to play. And we end up saying yes, maybe to things that we can't. The reality is it's not our responsibility to plug every single hole in a sports system. So again, we have to go back and always think about, like, where do I sit with this, and where is my mental health, and where is my time and priorities? Where do I have space to do that? Taking care of yourself first is really important. One of my favorite icons, RuPaul, always says, when you're on an airplane, you are given specific instructions to put the mask on your child or on yourself before you put it on your child or anybody else around you. So we need to, put the mask on ourselves first and make sure that we're breathing, that we're okay, we're taking care of our own mental health before we can actually be a positive contribution to those around us in any capacity. A little bit of an activity. So I'm going to ask you folks to do this just on your own in front of you. So hopefully you have just like a notepad or electronic notepad, somewhere where you can make a couple notes here that we're going to do a little brainstorming activity. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do this. So I would like you to make a list of, just brainstorm as many as you can, all of the roles that you play currently in your own life. I'm going to set my little timer because sometimes on Zoom, these minutes can feel like microwave minutes. So I'm going to give you a full 2 minutes to brainstorm about the number of roles that you play in your own life. And you can take the word role to mean whatever you'd like. It could mean an actual role. It could mean, in how you interact with people, in the way people come to you. Anything from the literal, I am a mom, I am a dad, to I am a therapist, I am whatever. So please take 2 minutes, just brainstorm a list in front of you. Think about in your work life, your personal life, family, friends, coaching, other hobbies that you do. Who are you to other people? Twenty-five seconds left. Get the last few in there. Be as specific as you can. Okay. Now I would like you to do a bit of a prioritization of your roles and an elimination. So I want you to cut down the number of roles you have in front of you. You can only have 6. You have to eliminate some in terms of what is the most important roles to you. You can only have a maximum of 6. Really hard to do that. Yeah, another 30 seconds for that. Be ruthless. Another 5 seconds. Okay, so now that you've got it down to 6, hopefully, which this is harder when I can't see everybody. Hopefully you're all doing this. When you're down to 6 now, I want you to really think about how those are a priority in your life. And now you have to cut down to 3. You may only keep 3. I'll give you 10 seconds for that. Hard decisions, even more ruthless than the first. More seconds. Okay, so you've likely cut out some things that you think are pretty important in your life as you cut down to 6 and now down to 3. So my question is, in your own life and how you operate today, when you think of those last 3 roles that you eliminated down to that are the most important to you as a human being, do you prioritize your schedule, or you are scheduling your priorities in terms of the amount of time you spend in your life on those 3 roles? So prioritizing our schedule means we're prioritizing the things that we're doing and we're fitting in, we're plugging in with those things that we've just determined are the most important to us. And the flip side that I want you to start thinking about is, how can I schedule in my priorities and then see what's left after? And that's where I can start filling in the things that are not as much of a priority to me. So again, just a little exercise of food for thought of flipping the script of how we operate as coaches. Often the people that are closest to you, the roles that you are most important, or roles that are most important to you, are also likely the most understanding people of what you do in your life, and the most understanding roles are going to be involved in those 3. But I just challenge you to think about, how are you prioritizing those 3 roles in your day-to-day, in your week-to-week, in your month-to-month, or are you scheduling your priorities? There's not a right and a wrong. It's just food for thought. Okay, we're going to start talking about thinking outside the norm. So in the sport world, in the coaching world, things are not as they are for people who are not involved in these things. So life as a coach, volunteer, anybody, like I said, doesn't look the same. Things like meal times, spending time with a partner, spending time with friends, pets, kids, holidays, vacations, hobbies, etc., are going to look different. And that's okay. So One of the most impactful people I ever heard speak was Cindy Tai. She's a coach here from Nova Scotia, coaching with Team Canada Soccer. She coaches with Dalhousie women's soccer team. And it was 7 or 8 years ago that I heard her speak at a function I was attending. And she talked about very real how her day-to-day average life is different than those around her. Her career choice that her career path that she's chosen involves coaching. And the reality was, especially in her soccer season, she's not home to have supper at the same time with her kids like everybody else. That her after school life with her family doesn't look the same as maybe someone in a different role. So, for her, having breakfast with her kids was something that she was able to do on a pretty regular basis. So while they weren't together at the dinner table at supper time, they were together for breakfast, and they made time to make sure that that happened as a family. So it's just something as simple as that, as a quick flick of the switch to think of, how can I make this coaching life work for me and find a little more balance, looking outside of the norm and looking at things from a little bit of a different lens. So I'm going to dive into this a little bit. So the first one is challenging the societal norms and expectations. So as a female who's 39, society expects me to have multiple children, to be taking care of the home, probably having a career on the side, but that's supposed to be my priority. So things like your age, your gender, your race, your experience, society has predetermined roles that we're all supposed to play. And part of what many of us are trying to do is change that societal norm, that everybody is unique and has their own experiences and their own, chosen path of life. And it shouldn't impact anybody else around me or anybody else around you. This is just what we're doing. So if I think about the norms and the societal expectations that exist, especially around women, if you take a look at this graph, that is from 2020, from Canadian Women in Sport. It's the Rally Report. And it just shows you very quickly of the percentage of men and women coaches in youth sport and CCAA. So that's here in Canada. It's pretty recent data, just slightly pre-pandemic. So looking at the number of head coaches, even in women's sport, we're still way above 50%. So that means that there are mostly men in these roles, even if it's a female sport. So 26% of head coaches at U Sport or CCAA are women for women's sports. A large part of that will come out of the opportunities that were available, as well as challenging those societal norms and expectations. So again, especially looking at gender equity, looking at all kinds of different lenses like that, we as coaches are perhaps up against a lot when it comes to thinking outside the norm and being okay with our lives looking slightly different in order for us to be able to participate in sport. Family and coaching is a big one. Number one, for me personally, I think it's really important that generally as a sport community, we're redefining the meaning of family. Family makeup and dynamic is shifting. Family no longer means a male and a female and 2 children and the white picket fence. Like, families can look all kinds of different ways. You can have family that are, related to you by blood. You can have chosen family, and neither of those is more important than the other. Families might include no kids. They might include multiple kids, 1 kid, pets, extended family, roommates. More and more people are buying homes together with a friend because interest rates are crazy. So there's all kinds of different makeups as to what family means. And I think it's really important for us as coaches to make sure that if we don't have what we would have called a traditional family, that we are not taken advantage of. For me, again, I'll use myself as an example. I'm a female. My husband and I do not have any children. People often see that as like, I have all kinds of free time. That's not the case. And if I do have free time, that doesn't mean I'm available. So being able to be in coaching roles or work roles or life roles, whatever it is that you're doing, just because somebody else is perceived to have a heavier load than you, doesn't mean that that should make you like have to step in and take up some of that space or to fill in some of those roles because someone else has a lot going on. what someone else has going on and what you have going on may look different, but again, not one is more important than the other. So I do challenge, sport organizations, coaching staffs, work environments to really be looking at shifting the meaning of family, and how that can be unique to everybody around us. The other thing I do want to talk about is coaching with kids. I don't have kids myself, as I've already acknowledged, so I've got some information to share from some people who I know who are coaching with kids and finding ways to make it work. Traditionally speaking, again, I work in sports, so I see a large gap of where people go away from the sport when they do have children, and they start coming back in when their children are involved in sport. That's fantastic. That's amazing that they're coming back in, that they took time away to have a different priority. But I also want to make it something to think about, that you can still continue to be involved in sport, even if you do have children or other commitments, pets, anything that takes you away from having as much of a priority in sport. There's still ways to make it work. I'll talk about some of those specifically, but just wanted to share a couple of examples of people I've talked to lately. There's a couple of coaches, again, my sport is volleyball. So in the Atlantic University sport here in our province, some of the coaches do have children, and they are working with their athletic departments to think about some ways to be able to take their children with them, to be able to make it possible for them to coach as a career while still choosing to have a family and being able to spend time with them. So some of the things that they've done is creating a desired plan with their partner, their family, of, what maternity leave might look like. It might not be a traditional, 12 months away or 18 months away from their role. It might be something different. And what does that look like, and what are they okay with as a family? A couple of coaches shared with me from some different sports around being fearful around having a conversation with their athletic department. Not because they'd said anything negative, but just no one had been doing it before they were. Talking to, organization administration around being able to try to find some accommodations to be able to coach while having children in your care, or trying to navigate that. So basically what a couple of the coaches I know did, kind of came up with a plan, approached their coaching staffs and or organization leads, athletic departments with, here's something that's important to me. In order for me to be able to be involved in coaching, I'm going to need some things to look slightly different. Some of it included, providing childcare, bringing their partner with them on road trips so that they could provide childcare for the child. Financial considerations to make some of those things happen. And I've talked to both male and female coaches around making this happen. And one of my friends is an assistant coach with a university team, and he ever so gratefully shared with me the couple of pictures I'm going to share with you from a couple of weekends ago. He took his daughter on their road trip to Moncton to play volleyball. And they talked to the referees when they got there and said, my daughter's going to be sitting behind the bench. She's going to be on a chair behind us. The referees were very supportive. She came on the bus with the team. The team was able to, interact with her, and just the amazing kind of role model moments. And, just that it was no big deal for it to happen was something great to see. And I'm sure memories for his daughter that she will take on for a lifetime. But just want to really reinforce that if you do have children, if you do have pets, if you have, responsibilities, maybe it's an elder family member that you need to care for. If you have responsibilities like that, we should be in a time and place now where organizations are doing what they can to help accommodate and be able to provide opportunities for people to continue to coach while providing some supports. Obviously, some of these supports require money, require, different kinds of organizational kind of logistics to figure out. And many of sport organizations don't always have, lots of money hanging around. But if you are coming in with a prepared plan of, here's some things I need, here's some ways we can help make it work. It's our hope that more organizations, sport or not, are willing to be open to those conversations and be able to provide some ways that you can set some different boundaries with your involvement in coaching, but still be able to care for those around you and involve them in what you're doing in your life as well. So now that we've talked about some self-awareness pieces, we're talking a little bit around thinking outside the norm. Now let's talk about hopefully some tangibles and some skills and some suggestions around setting boundaries for yourself, as well as the organizations or people that you are going to deal with in a regular sport environment. So we kind of talked about the first two here. I want to dive into communication, because in my experience, that is pretty much the key element to successfully setting boundaries for yourself when you are coaching. So again, I think the first conversation that is really important to have in your life, especially when considering committing to something, is, with those kind of key stakeholders in your own life, whether that's a partner, a friend, a roommate, a parent, whatever that is, whoever is most important to you and will potentially be impacted by a choice you're making to be involved in with coaching or anything. Involving them in that conversation can be really helpful. It's not an asking permission type of situation. It's just respecting the people that are around you and that they're going to be affected potentially positively, maybe negatively by some of your choices, and just involving them in that process. For me personally, that has been something that I've learned by not doing, and learned how well it has gone for me by being able to involve them in that decision-making process. It also helps me be able to explain why I'm doing something, and kind of just, again, be a little bit of a sounding board for me and what the impact might look like for them, and talk about maybe some of their concerns. So potentially, before you say yes to something, it gives you a little bit more information to talk to the group you're thinking about going with on, here's some of the concerns that I might have, or here's some of the barriers that might prevent me from saying yes. So again, setting expectations with the organization around what you're committing to, and also then what you might need to make the commitment. So clearly stating with the organization or the group or the coach or the team what your availability is and what your commitment level is. Being really clear about that from the start is extremely helpful. Most of the time, if you end up doing a little bit more, no one's usually upset. But if you're throwing out saying you're going to be there for everything and you end up only being able to be there for 50%, it's kind of hard sometimes to walk back from that unless something unexpected has happened. So discussing that early on before you even make the commitment is probably the best case scenario. And then clarifying what the expectations are for you as the coach. So practices, if you're a head coach, are you expected to be at every single practice? Is there a mechanism in place for if you can't be there? Are they providing you with a coaching staff? What is the skill level and skill set of that coaching staff? Are you expected to go to competitions? How many competitions are you expected to go to? Are you expected to travel to these competitions? If you are, what time are you expected to take time off work? Is there reimbursement for that? What about all the administrative work that comes with the team? Are you expected to handle that, or are there other people that are helping? Is there compensation for your coaching? Is there an honorarium? Those are two different things. Compensation means, when you travel, is your gas money paid for? Kilometers? Is your hotel covered? Are your meals covered? An honorarium is outside of that. Is there something as a little bit of a thank you at the end that the organization is able to provide? Again, sometimes the answer might be no to some of these things, but if you're asking the specific questions ahead of time, it can really help you make an educated decision on a commitment that you're thinking about taking. With all of those things that you're going to kind of ask about, if there's discrepancies or things that don't jive, asking is there flexibility, or are there resources available to help with some of those? So, again, it's almost like a salary negotiation in a job. Like, they give you a starting point. Is there room to kind of go up, or provide different resources to help make that an easier yes for you to be involved? So some of those things to think about. Clear expectations with the team at the beginning of your season. So we've gotten past the organizational admit. We've said, yes, we're in. So at the beginning of your season, it's really important to set clear expectations with anybody who's involved, all your stakeholders, your athletes, your parents, their families. It could be with referees. It could be with your your sport organization. Clear expectations at the beginning of your season. Again, ideally, this is something you're putting together before the season starts so that you're starting off with a bit of a backbone before your season begins. I've probably done that too much and probably not enough at different points in my career. I think what I've learned now is being clear about the commitment level, my commitment level, their commitment level, the parents' commitment level, and what the team, like what does our season look like? Again, if they're signing up to be on your team or they're thinking about signing up to be on your team or try out for your team, being really clear about financial commitments, travel commitments, time commitments. That's really important so that, again, everybody can make an educated decision on if it's a place they want to be. Secondly is setting a team culture and fleshing it out fully as to what it looks like in behaviors, language, communication. So it's great to say, you know, we expect the athletes to be on time for practice. On time means 15 minutes prior. If you're talking to parents about that before the season starts, like it gives parents the opportunity to be like, hey, I'm a single parent. I'm working till 5 o'clock. Practice starts at 5:30. Like, getting my kids there 15 minutes early is going to be a bit of a struggle for me, but I can promise you I will get them there as soon as I can, but it might not be 15 minutes early all the time. It gives chance for that communication so that 2 weeks down the road, I'm not frustrated that, you know, Johnny isn't at practice on time and it's consistent. Most of the time at the age group you folks are coaching with, the athletes are not driving themselves, it's the parents. So having that communication with the parents can be really helpful. Setting out these things early on. Again, you don't want to get too specific and kind of stay really black and white. You want to provide structure for your team and be clear, but you always want to leave a little bit of room for professional judgment and flexibility when unique situations come up. It can be really hard to back out of something if you lay everything out black and white and then something kind of unexpected or in a certain situation comes up that you didn't really think about. And now you're kind of like, you've jammed yourself in with a very, very specific, you know, contract or team culture, whatever that looks like. So it's important to have some structure, but always leave a little bit of room for professional judgment and flexibility when you're interacting and dealing with all the different people that you have to deal with in a sporting role. Communication is key. Continuing. Receiving a work email on a Saturday. No, thank you. Does it happen? Yes. So being specific, you know, athlete contracts, parent contracts, those are fairly commonplace with a lot of teams that I'm seeing now, including a bit of a time gap for any grievances or questions. A lot of teams I've seen have established a 24 or 48-hour rule before communication happens after something that someone's not super happy about. Obviously, this is not like safe sport related or anything like that. These are like playing time questions, you know, opportunities questions, things that are outside of the safe sport realm. Let me be really clear about that. But establishing an appropriate time and method for communication to occur can be very helpful. Be clear around the proper communication channels that are okay. And what a general expected response time might be for those communication channels. So, you know, for me, if you email me, you can usually expect, this is for my work, you can usually expect a response within 48, or sorry, like 2 business days. Usually I'm able to get back to you within that. If you text me about work, you're probably going to get my canned response unless I know you really well. If somebody random texts me on my phone for work, I don't deal on text for work. So they get a canned response back from me that I have copy and pasted from my phone of thanks for reaching out to me. I'd love to help you with this, but could you please just follow up with this in an email and I'd be happy to get back to you. It's really plain and simple. But I'm not interested in texting for a work purpose unless it's something really quick. So being able to have that little bit of a boundary helps me in work or in sport. You know, a lot of people are also using like different team apps like Team Snap or Remind. Staff Team is another one I've been using lately. So having apps like that can be really helpful to contain information and communication into a spot. But giving people an expected communication response time can be really helpful for helping people be patient as well when it comes to that. And it helps us just, again, set those boundaries, be able to say, you know what, Saturday, I'm out with my family. I'm not going to be responding to coaching questions during that time. Like, I will get back to you on Monday. If it's an emergency, please use this method, and like, I will get back to you as soon as I can. So being able to communicate some of those things with the folks you're dealing with can just, again, set some of those boundaries for you. Lastly here, my last few little tidbits. Once you get rolling, again, setting aside time in your schedule for coaching things can really help you be very present with the people that you're spending time with in your personal life, and be present with them. So, you know, communicating with athletes and parents or an organization, doing video reviews, scheduling a little bit of time for practice planning allows you to, you know, really dial in on your practice plan and spend that 45 minutes or an hour planning it. But then you're not thinking about your practice plan over supper that night, and you can be present and engaged with the conversation of the people around your supper table with you. Don't be available at any and all times, point blank. Again, setting those boundaries with the people around you are very important, and can remind them that you are a human being, that you are a normal person, and you do things outside of the coaching life where you don't necessarily want to be thinking about coaching. And I would say my last kind of piece of advice is think about sustainability. And this is often where we end up with burnout. We end up with people leaving sport because it's just not physically, mentally, emotionally possible to sustain what they are doing for 5, 10, 15, 20 years in coaching, if that's where you'd like to still be involved. So again, I ask you to, you know, as we're kind of closing out here, is to reflect on what you are doing today in terms of boundaries, in terms of communication, availability, different commitments that you're making. And can you keep doing this for 2 years, or for 1 year? I might even start with 2 years, 5 years, 15 years. And if it's not sustainable, then I really invite you to critically think about, you know, what that looks like, and how maybe with some adjustments, you could elongate your coaching career if that's something that you're hoping to be involved in long term. The last thing I will leave you with is, again, just because I'm free doesn't mean I'm available. Let's try to bring that into my personal mantra. Allison, that's it for my slides, but would love to open it up to like any comments. I don't know if anything has been flying into the chat. If anybody wants to, you know, open up and comment or have a question, please feel free.
First of all, I'm making that my new mantra. I need a t-shirt that says that.
Except when I ask you,
yeah,
right? Not when it comes
except
to me.
for when you need something from me. The comments that came through in the chat were great during, we had a couple people sharing, you know, I bring my younger daughter to the older daughter's soccer practice. It's just how it is. I love to hear that that's flies. It's okay.
Yeah.
The athletes support my son completely and try to include him in our training. It's never been a problem to them, but can definitely be a distraction for me. Someone else shared. Yeah, so if anyone has questions, comments, even like tips or tricks for setting boundaries that they have, we have 10 minutes left, so feel free to turn your mic on and chime in.
Yeah, or pop it in the chat if you're mic shy.
Yeah.
That's okay too. It's a Monday. It's a holiday for some of us.
Anybody?
I have a question.
Sure.
So so my daughter is a multi-sport athlete, so I'm legit involved in like everybody's sport, from coaching to, I keep score, learning referee stuff. Like, we're a very small community, and therefore like the parents are relied on quite heavily. And you know, I have the capability, and so I always say yes. But I find that there are a couple of people who, like, I want to support them more because I'm a little better at saying no and monitoring my own time. I am much better at it now. How do I support somebody else who I see is struggling because of all of the things they do, and they don't like letting go? And I'm just like, let me do this. Let so like I'm happy to volunteer the other parents too who aren't doing anything. I'm happy to throw them under the bus. Like I the more that are involved, the less on all of our plates. But I find one person in particular takes an obscene amount onto their plate and then doesn't let go. And I just, how do I support them? How do I encourage them to let go?
Great question. The problem is that as coaches, sometimes we're control freaks and we don't want to let go because you get so used sometimes to doing everything yourself that you like build up this wall or this incorrect perception that like you're the only one that can do it to your standard, to the way that you want it. Like you're talking my language. I can hear myself saying
Yes.
those things to myself.
That is this person.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I don't have any kind of like golden answer. I wish I did. But I think often in my experience in any facet of my life, saying like, can I help or do you need any help often doesn't result in that person saying yes. Or because sometimes they don't even know what they need help with or what they could get help with.
Exactly.
So maybe I mean, I'm open to anybody like weighing in on this. Again, I'm not an expert, but maybe offering something more specifically, you could try that of like, hey, I feel like this is a strength of mine. I'd really like to help with this. Can I take this off your plate? Maybe that could work because it kind of seems like you're coming with a bit of a plan, versus saying like, hey, I can help with everything. Yeah, love that, Roz, like bringing in younger coaches, newer coaches, but providing them with a mentor can also help so that you don't feel like you're flailing on your own. Absolutely. But yeah, Jen, that's a great problem. And I think it exists in most people who are busy. That would be my one suggestion. I don't know if that's helpful.
I will give it a try.
If someone came to me with like an active plan, I think I'd be like, oh, okay, they've put thought into this. They're intentionally thinking of like this is something that they can help with versus me being scared to give you something and then either have to take it back or like then have to help you do it. So like now I'm doubling my time instead of just doing it myself. So yeah, I like that.
I'll give it a try.
Okay. Yes, Deanne. 2 competitive teams last season, overcommitted. Mm-hmm. I think I had a memory come up in my Facebook from I don't know, a little over 10 years ago when I was a phys ed teacher before I took this role on. And I was like, my post is like, I'm already coaching 5 teams. Can someone come coach my grade 7 team at my school? Because they have no coach. I'm like, what was I doing coaching 5 teams? I don't know how that was any kind of life for myself. But sometimes you have to go over the top to realize you've gone too far. Anna.
Yeah, just a comment around setting a limit on when you're going to reach back out to people. Like, I'll get back to you in 24 to 48 hours. When I'm coaching within, summer soccer, we have games on the weekend, we have practices in the week. So there's really no off days in communication. Any kind of thoughts around that, because we have games on the weekend where we have to communicate sometimes the day of, and then we have practices like Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday. So you can't really turn off sometimes. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, agreed. There's definitely obviously if you have like a team at a tournament, you can't be like, I'll talk to you in 2 days. That doesn't quite work when you have things going on. I think as coaches, we know that there's going to be busier times in our season, that things are going to be a little more chaotic, and trying to communicate that with the people around you is helpful of like, hey, if we really want to go out to dinner, it's got to be before March 1st, because like March 1st to March 31st, I'm off the grid. So trying to make use of those other times. But when it comes to communication, if you're likely going to have to be available maybe like at some point every day for like a couple of weeks, maybe it's like 8 weeks and that's your season, even scheduling like a time of your day where like you can expect a response from me. If you email me in the evening, like I'm really, when I get home from practice or I get home from the tournament, I'm really trying to spend time with like the people in my life. But you know what, like every morning I'm going to try to get back to you, before 10 a.m. So, but like if you write me at 3 p.m., it's going to have to wait till like the next day unless it's time sensitive. So you might have to like give that caveat. And then because there's the gray area. You got to decide whether what someone else thinks is important and time sensitive, what you think is time sensitive and important, sometimes don't always jive together. But yeah, I would try to think like, in my day, I'm going to get back to everybody I can in the morning. And then after that, I'm not available, by email. If it's an emergency, here's my phone number. Other than that, it can wait till the next day and I'll get back to you. Could be helpful in a busy time of season. Might give you some peace in the evening to read a book or something. I don't know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think that expectation of being available 24/7 obviously is like a symptom of our now phone culture. But I think that's an awesome suggestion to just be like, look, I answer emails at this time of the day. I even find that as a volunteer coach, like sometimes I feel guilty when I'm getting parent or athlete things come at me between 9 and 5 because I'm like, oh, I want to get back to that, but I'm like, I actually am working in that my job that pays me all day long. Yeah, so it's like self-induced pressure sometimes.
Yeah, and I kind of say, like, for me personally, email is kind of like the any time of day. Like, you can send me an email any time of day. It's up to me whether I check it any time of day or not. Do I check my email too much? Yes, I do. That's a boundary I'm working on. But so being able to, for parents of kids that I'm coaching or whoever, it's like, hey, you can email me any time of day. If you're working a night shift and like you get off at 6 a.m. and that's a great time for you to send an email, like feel free. My email notification sound is off when I am unavailable, so it won't bother me. So like having something like that can help as well, where it's like they can have a little bit of an outlet, but it's not going to intrude in your, your quiet time for yourself or doing something you're doing could also be helpful. That's great. Chantel, like saying, she just commented saying sometimes she knows she's overcommitted, but can again give a specific time frame to like, things are crazy, but in 6 weeks time, I'm going to be able to like, find some more time to do X, Y, Z. The challenge is like hoping that it actually ends after the 6 weeks. Sometimes I say that and then I fill something else, find a busy person to do something. We just fill something else right into that hole. It's true. These are no fail-safe ways by any means. These are just some things that I've been able to put together over lessons learned myself the hard way. But I really hope that, again, if nothing else, the reflection on like you're already doing some great things, hopefully some new ideas, or take a moment to reflect on, what's going on in your life to help as you move forward in your coaching career. But again, just because you're available doesn't mean you're free. My closing words.
Thank you so much. Everyone, we will send out a recording of this session and I'll get Megan's slides from her perhaps, and we can share all that with you if it's stuff you want to refer back to, which I definitely will be doing. So yeah, thank you, Megan. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to everyone for being here. I will just plug that we have one more Podium performance series coming up on November 22nd. It's about navigating the uncontrollables that we encounter as coaches, and that's led by Renee Matte, who's a sports psychologist out of New Brunswick. So you can register for that on the locker as well if you'd like to join us. Otherwise, have a lovely night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.